Today's Unbound History, we're looking at Sibton Abbey. It's a small ruin. There's nothing to it. Just, that's it, what you can see there. A few stones standing in a field. I wasn't even intending to come here. I was driving over to a much better known abbey. And as we drove past, you can see a few walls in a field. And it's actually a protected site. It's an English heritage site. You park down the road in the village. But it's quite fascinating. It's untouched. Just deserted in a field. You can see the main church and you can see a bit of the cloister. And that really is it. Up high you can see outlines of other buildings. But today that's all that's left, a few stones standing in a field. Yet years ago, this abbey owned everything as far as you can see in every direction. It was a centre of commerce. There was probably some religion there as well. And there in that field, you could see the outlines of just some of the rest of the structure. Lost to time, buried under a couple of inches of sod, the outlines of an immense abbey, all degraded and eroded to a few stones held together with metal girders and pins. But I think it's a really good example of how we overlook the monasteries. The monasteries were a cornerstone of British life. Effectively, you had the king and the nobles, and you had the clerics and the monasteries. And it was these monasteries which were a source of income, industry, centre of agriculture. And now, lost to time, forgotten, just thought of as a little church in a field. But once upon a time, this was a very significant site. And dotted around the country are ruins like these. For 500 years this has been deserted. Nobody decided to do something with it after the Reformation. They sliced up the land, placed farms on the various pieces. But for some reason this one got cut into 3 or 4 major slices and nobody took the actual church. In the coming weeks we're going to visit several abbeys which are quite different, and they took them over and they used them and exploited them as their own palaces. A noble's palace where the house of God had once been. Even a stable where the church had been. But for hundreds of years, Britain revolved around these monasteries. They were a way in which the Normans enforced their dominance in Britain by making sure that the abbots were Norman and by owning large swathes of land. And it was a huge change in Britain when these monasteries and abbeys suddenly were up for grabs. For whatever reason, no one chose to grab this abbey, and now it's just a few stones in a field. I can't say I'd recommend driving hours to come and see this, but if you're ever passing by, take a look. And make sure you subscribe for next week's Hidden History, which will be a bit more interesting in that it's more than just stones in a field, but really could have ended just the same way.